Ditto. Welcome again, everybody, to our work meeting for the city council on December 12th, 2023. So we're going to go right into the discussion on the ordinance enacting Title 10, Chapter 10 -16, Section 10-16 I guess that's period, whatever dot, accessory dwelling units of the Morgan City Code, Ordinance 2316. So Jake, we'll turn some time over to you. And let me just make a note at the start. We're going to try to end this at 22. So Gary has some training that we need to listen to. Or we get to listen to.
Privileged.
Privileged.
There we go. We'll see. I'll be the judge.
Do you want to use your?
I do.
screen share? Okay.
Yeah, can you send me a link? You probably already did, but. Okay.
You can get started.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start talking about that while Denise gets me that link and I can do a screen share with the ordinance. So state law, as it is now written, requires that all cities allow for accessory dwelling units. And the language is internal accessory dwelling unit. And what that means is inside your building footprint. And recently it's been revised so that includes the garage. So if someone wanted to go in and remodel their home to allow for it within the garage, then that's okay too. The only cities that can get out of that are those with universities, and it's for a portion of their city. Morgan doesn't apply. So we have to do that. And essentially that was already allowed by state law, just because state law trumps it. So over the last year, we said, let's enact an ordinance to allow for accessory dwelling units. And what we're going to do is there's that link. What we're going to do is use all of the tools that are, because the state says you have to do accessory dwelling units, and then says, if you would like, you can allow and control parking somewhat. There's a number of these levers and factors that we can control. So through the planning commission, we exercised all of those factors that we could. Also included in that is that we can require owner occupancy.
Recording in progress.
Oh. Okay. That's the agenda. Oh, you do? Well, you just pull it up. That's all I was going to do. I can have it ready for the next hour, but. Okay. So in terms of definitions or understanding accessory dwelling units, we have accessory dwelling unit, which is of course, a housing type, and they come in all kinds. They can be up in an attic, actually. They can be on the main floor. They can be in the basement. Remember the Fonzie flat from the Happy Days over the garage. Canada, they call them secondary units. There's the carriage or the coach house over the garage. There's the granny flat in the back. I mean, there's just a million names for them. But legally, accessory dwelling unit. And I think the public actually now understands accessory dwelling unit. A few years ago, they're like, what are you talking about? But now they know that. So there's the definitions. Internal is required by state law. we added the definition of attached accessory dwelling unit. So if someone wants to come in and add on to their home, then it's an attached ADU. And that a city could prohibit if they wanted to. But the other thing is if someone came in and added on and then called it an internal unit and remodeled it after, they could do that too. There's kind of that workaround. So it's like, why do we want to, fight that? And then the last one is detached accessory dwelling unit. And that's where you have a separate unit and you go out and do that. So one thing you need to understand is this ordinance would allow a person to actually have 2 accessory dwelling units, because by state law, they can already do an internal one. And then we're allowing a second one.
Wouldn't that be subject to parking?
Yeah, there's a lot of conditions.
Yeah.
There are conditions. They can't just like go out and start construction. There's a
May
lot of
be limited
conditions.
by other conditions.
And a couple things on this, my city, Farmington, has actually allowed both for decades. It goes 10 to 20 years. It's never been an issue. Layton, you do have ADUs as well. It's really not an issue. In Utah, the cities that have the most ADUs have 5% at the most in terms of all the homes, only 5%. Places like Vancouver, Canada, which have the most ADUs in the continent, they're at 25%. But you think about the cost of housing, Vancouver's a lot like Seattle, those big cities. Everybody's trying to find a place very different than Utah. So don't think that right away everybody's just going to go out and build one of these and our population doubles. Some people do react that way, and it's just not reality. So any question on the different kinds of ADUs? Now, an ADU is not, it's not an RV. It's not a mobile home. Has to be on a foundation. And we probably will get pushback on that or there probably will be people who are doing that. I'm sure you already have it. And they'll say, oh, it's an ADU. No, it's not. This is our definition. And we specifically said, it has to be on a foundation, and mobile units, excuse me, don't count.
So let's say somebody already is, say, in a motorhome next to a house, what?
Yeah.
This, other than it's probably against some things in the city.
I think that would be code violation, but I don't know exactly where you probably have a limit of how many days you can have that, or
Are you talking about versus,
an RV. If someone's living in an RV at a house. This doesn't apply, but the mayor's asking, what do we do about that? And
Well, when
code enforcement comes into play, but
if this goes through, then that's even, is that,
You asking,
It still doesn't
are you
apply.
asking, are people grandfathered into this? Is that-
well, it's hard to grandfather because we don't allow it now,
yeah, it
but we don't enforce it either.
yeah, it would continue to be an illegal use
Okay.
Well,
unless it's an RV park.
well, I mean, I've thought a lot about this, but I thought, been around long enough to know that the enforcement issue is, it's pretty difficult. So, I mean, obviously, we're not proactive. We don't have staff to go out and proactively look at this. But at least to me, this means that if I have something going on in my neighborhood that I'm not happy with, and I think there's a violation, then I can go into the city and say, okay, right, and file a complaint. And at that point in time, the city would be obliged to come
Yes,
take a look at it. Is that
and you can do that now.
right? But
Yeah.
And it would have to be by a complaint,
mhm.
and it wouldn't force everybody that's in that situation to, that there would have to be a complaint on another piece of property. Correct?
I think it'd just.
One isn't against all. It's just a complaint. I have a complaint with this
Mhm.
situation right here. And that's what I'm saying. We have a few of these that are living kind of there.
I would think it would be case by case, wouldn't it?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it is.
Complaint has to be come over and written out.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Phone call.
Right, signed.
Yeah.
Okay, we can go into the chart there. All right, so in terms of uses, if you scroll down a little bit. I think we passed it. But the uses. Right there, I think we can keep it there. So the uses for ADUs will be the same as single family homes. So whatever people can do now in their house, that will be the same in ADUs. Home business is okay, living is okay. Farm animals or whatever, that would just be according to whatever's allowed on that property. So essentially the uses don't change. Where these are allowed is in every zone that is residential. Ag, all the Rs, and then we do have the asterisks on the commercial, because right now we have residential homes that are existing but non-conforming. People that live on State Street, when they built that home, it was totally fine. Now it's a commercial zone and it doesn't allow for residential, but they're okay. And so that's where it is. The minute that home changes use and someone is no longer living in it, let's just say that I live on State Street and then I build an ADU and start renting it. And then I move out and turn my home into an office. Then I think the ADU would have to go. Is that how you would see it, Gary?
Yeah. with
Okay.
the abandonment.
So the residential use of the main property is tied to the accessory use.
So in a commercial with a home existing now, it says it can only be internal. According
And yes, that is only internal and detached. And the reason why not for detached is because we intend for those commercial homes to transition into something else in the future. That's intended to, and they actually have a lot of economic opportunities based on their location and zoning. And then also detached ADUs are not permitted on flag lots because you have a home behind a home behind a home. And it just seems like bad, emergency access, finding it, utilities, all of that kind of thing. Okay, we can move on. So there will be an ADU application. And depending on what type of ADU it is, it'll be easier or harder. If it's an internal ADU, then they just have to do a few things. If it's a attached ADU or a detached ADU, then they have to bring in building plans and get a building permit and all of that.
Are those applications still to be developed or do we have those ready?
No, we don't have them ready. I was waiting until we have an ordinance before I put any
Spend your time.
effort on that. It's
Smart
true.
move.
We have not set the fee. What is the process for setting fees?
We do it through the consolidated fee schedule here.
Okay.
So it would be a fee that we would charge for, I guess, business licensing, right? Business license,
No, that's
Sure.
for the short-term rental.
the ADUs.
So it just follows the building permit.
Just the building permit.
So whatever fee we come up with will be based on number of inspections, plan review, and staff time.
So there's the land use permit to allow for accessory dwelling unit, and then there's the business or the building permit as well.
Mhm.
But the building permit is very much like
They're both on the consolidated fee schedule
and the
So,
building
yeah.
permit isn't much. It's pretty much just saying this house has smoke detectors in it. It's got,
though. Mhm.
you don't change the air conditioning unit to
Oh,
separate
yeah.
unit or separate the utilities or anything that you normally do on
For the internal
right.
and also what could be the attached.
And same thing.
Yeah,
They're
attached
all
to be
run
the-
through the house.
yeah.
So if they're detached.
Okay. So we will, and who sets that fee? Does the council set the fee?
Council says be.
Okay, so we'll be coming back with that. maybe even next month or shortly thereafter, we'll want to do that, assuming it's adopted, after it's adopted, we'll do that. Okay, so here are some standards that apply to all ADUs. So it cannot be sold separately. That's important. That probably will happen, and I've heard of people trying that where they build a detached, then try to split it, the property and all of that. And of course, it needs to conform to all applicable building codes. If it's in sensitive lands, a detached or ADU has to be reviewed by city staff. That's per our sensitive lands ordinance. I'm hoping it's a light review. I don't want someone that's in a floodplain or a steep slope have to come in with all the things like we do on a commercial, and I've prepped Matt and I think he's there. They cannot install separate meters. And that's a city, the state allows us to do that, but that's a city decision based off of some of your divisions at the city. They said, we do not want the power guy. He was like, we do not want people having separate meters and all that. That just is kind of a nightmare for the city. Setbacks are the same as the main structure. That is something that we could come back to. Sometimes cities have separate setbacks. Oh no, excuse me. I'm sorry. That for an attached ADU, it's the same because now it's part of the main structure. But detached, we do have setbacks in the ordinance. And then, one thing people are going to ask about is what about architecture? And we do have some things on there. 25% of the exterior material needs to match the house. So there's a little bit of design conformity, and then colors are 60%. So if someone wants to redo their whole house colors, and they could do it all the same in the new one. Or if they're just adding on, then we're saying 60% or a detached. Needs to have an outside entrance. That's important. I've seen a number of these where people will have, you just have to walk through the yard and get there, and it becomes really awkward. And in the wintertime, trudging through a foot of snow that you would have to shovel on grass or some other material is not a good thing. So if someone's going to have one of these, let's give the renters a sidewalk to the driveway. The short-term renting is per business license, just like that's happening with the short-term rental. And then no more than one family may rent the ADU at any time. And then we're referencing state code on the family, because the state code does reference what a family is, which is no more than 3 unrelated people. Is that right?
Is it 5 or 3?
Maybe it's more.
I thought it was 5.
5, okay, maybe it's 5. I referenced the state code there just for that purpose. Okay, we can go on to internal and attached. This is what the state code allows us to do. So it's prohibited on lots less than 6,000 square feet. They do have to have 1 off-street parking for the ADU, and that's on top of what is already required. Let's say your home requires you to have 2 parking stalls. You have an ADU, now you need to have 3 stalls. And then, again, not permitted in mobile home. We can go on to detached. A couple things there. It can't be built on slopes greater than 30%. Again, matching architecture, colors, all of that. They do, and it does have to have its own building permit. Let's just say you're building your single family home and you want to build an ADU at the same time. It makes sense. There's a lot of good reasons to do that. Your building department said, I want to have a separate permit for that because it'll be tracking different. That way, plumbing may or may not be ready, the same one. You could almost build the ADU, the detached ADU first and live in it while you build your single family home or something like that. So anyway, there is that two building permits just in case it's happening at the same time. Now, for the detached, we require a larger lot, 10,000 square feet. And we also require that it's set back 5 feet from the front of the home. So it's sitting back a little bit. Side yard setback is 10 feet unless it's a corner, then it's 15. The rear setback is 10 feet. And then the distance from the primary structure is 10 feet. And the building code is actually 6 feet. But the building department wanted it a little bit more. So the closest you can have per building code is 6 feet between two buildings.
Is fire okay with that?
Yeah.
That
I mean,
distance?
that meets fire code too.
Okay, you check that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then, this is where fire came in. This was their comment we added. So the detached ADU shall not be greater than 250 feet from the nearest fire hydrant. One stall per bedroom. So if it is a 2-bedroom ADU, detached ADU, then they would need 2 parking stalls. The height is 25 feet. That's because that's the height of your single family homes. And then this one right here, the main floor of the detached ADU shall not be greater than the existing square footage of the primary dwelling main floor or maximum main floor square footage of 1,000 square feet, which is pretty good size.
There was a lot of discussion about
Yeah,
that.
there was a lot of discussion on,
Well, and
On that.
concerned that an ADU would be larger than the
Primary residence.
primary and
Yeah.
hence it's not an accessory anymore. So that's a nice addition.
yeah.
Yeah, good work.
So the height, 25 feet, is that the top of the roof?
Yes,
It's not.
That seems like it's kind of short.
it is.
for a two-story.
That's what the city code is.
Hmm.
Now, for an ADU, it's
Does it change?
that,
I don't know, I thought it was 30, but
How tall is a
Maybe that was
typical
years ago.
two-story house? I don't even know. Nowadays, they're pretty tall.
they are,
Story detached.
It's about 35 feet, aren't they?
and you can make, what you could do is, and maybe here's something, if we want to tweak this. Is maybe the height is not, okay, here's the problem. I was gonna say that the height is not greater than the single family home. That way, if a person has a larger single family home, then the ADU can be taller. However, I have seen a number of detached ADUs in Salt Lake City where it's a 1955 bungalow and then they have an alley and then they build a 2-story ADU in the back with the Fonzie flat over the garage, and that actually looks good, works just fine. There's no problems with it. And so being not taller than the home really hurts them. And so I don't want to do that because you probably have some single story homes where people do want to do a 2-story because they want to put it over a garage or something and it doesn't make sense.
And if I might,
Yes, please.
a lot of times that will create kind of like a prefabricated home. If you don't have a little more of a allowance for a peak on the roof. I know I've got an ADU in my backyard and the peak is higher than the front house. But specifically, so it didn't look like a prefab or something like that in the backyard. So otherwise you incentivize them to, if you've got a single story home, you incentivize a very, very low slope on the rear house, so.
Yeah.
So.
Well, tonight you could bump it up to 27 is a nice little buffer, 28. You could even do 30 without going to 3 stories. Does Morgan City have any 3-story homes that are new?
Not homes,
Okay,
not homes. Our hotel was the last 3-story building that we did, and I thought that it had a 35-foot.
yeah, I think I matched your
requirement.
residential height at the 25.
So there was some averaging or something because the thing on top of the hotel's above 35, but there was I think 35 was the commercial 3-story. So I don't know how that.
Well, I was wondering, our shop next to our home.
My wife's been thinking about putting a room upstairs for a bigger gathering place for all the family. But that'd be a lot higher than 25 feet probably. Because
Adding on to your shop?
above
Oh, above it.
above it. So with the height of it already, plus that would be more than 25.
Although
I've kept her shut down, but she keeps it crawling.
Well, now you can tell our city ordinance doesn't allow it and you can't do anything about it.
You wouldn't-
Got it shut down.
that wouldn't be an ADU anyway, though, right?
You sit on the council?
No, no, but
They're-
still falls back to the building code.
Yeah,
Right, so you're saying, Jake, to raise this, we'd have to change something else in our code?
No, no, I mean, this is independent and you could just do that. However, this 25 foot is 90% sure that I matched
What was that?
what was in the city. That's the reason I came up with that number.
Probably makes sense to keep them the same to me.
Okay.
Man, it sure seems low, cause I'm pretty sure there's.
That- I thought it was
two-story
low, too.
homes with- That are at the peak of their roof or above 25 feet.
I'm sitting here trying to, I'm sure we'd never come to this, but I'm sitting here in my mind trying to visualize a street where there's a bunch of one-story, single-family residences with, and I said this has never happened, but behind it is attached ADUs that are taller than the primary residence. I'm sitting here trying to think, how would that look? I guess it would be,
And didn't we pass that says it has to, can't be taller than the?
well, right here it'd be the same height. wouldn't it?
Right. I mean, that,
There it is.
there may be an argument for an overall taller roof line, but that, I'm just saying it ought to be the same. If we do 27 here, we ought to do 27 in the other.
That's what you have for height.
It's as long as it isn't, in my mind, taller than, what is it taller than, well, especially the
Yeah,
detached is taller than the.
yeah, the
main.
accessory
Yeah.
probably shouldn't be taller than the primary,
I wouldn't think so either, but that's
just for
just
aesthetics.
trying to picture that.
Yeah,
Okay.
But it does seem kind of.
I mean, could you set this at 25 and revisit it?
Oh,
You know,
You know where it is?
The whole-
both of them.
The whole thing's a work in progress, right?
Yeah, I think even this is going to be,
The only thing this would apply on is if it's a two-story house, is the main.
Yeah.
shelves.
Yeah.
And then they're doing an ADU,
I have no idea.
attached ADU.
Height
but
on
they
the
went two
building.
Stories.
How tall is a typical two-story house? I don't even know.
You might not have, do you know if there's a building height in the code?
Should be. I don't know.
We don't,
Let me
we
look.
don't, I don't see it. I'm matching the accessory residential structure.
Yeah, because
This thing came up when I was on the planning commission years ago.
the height.
Okay, let's come back to the height issue. So on termination. So once somebody builds an ADU, that's obviously part of the home, it's there, that's not going away. But the land use, the allowance of them to use it for residential, the city can revoke. And also, that means they could not rent it to anybody outside of family. And you could also, of course, revoke a business permit if they're not being a good landlord. Also, we do require that if you're renting it, that you're owner occupied. That's something that the planning commission supported. What it does is it keeps it a home from becoming a rental duplex.
Like that.
And it does encourage home ownership as well. And that may be a case that if somebody comes in and argues, why is the city allowing all these, extra units or whatever? There's a couple things you could say is, one, it's a very organic growth, one by one. It's residential in scale and nature. Neighborhoods with a bunch of ADUs does not change what a neighborhood looks like. It just does not. And then the other thing that you can say is that you require that that one of the units be owner occupied. And then also to remember, it doesn't matter if the owner wants to live in the ADU and rent out the main house, great, do it. And if they want to go the other way, it's just fine, do it. Just living on the premise. Okay, this is just getting into the notices and violations and that kind of thing. The city can do a lien. They can, fine for $100 a day for violation. There's certainly some teeth in there. They're not following it. Any questions? Have you heard anything from constituents, neighbors?
Got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Back on page 3. On the first ABCD on part D. Number 1 there, back down to D again. A denied approval application may be appealed through the appeal authority. Who is the appeal authority?
In Morgan, we appoint appeal authority when we need it. We used to have a board of adjustment
Okay,
that used to do that, but we changed it to an appointed appeal authority. And I think we've selected, a long time ago, we selected 3 people, 3 or 4 people, qualified individuals, but that we could choose from. But we haven't had an appeal for so long that
We need to redo that.
we probably
Have it in
need to
place, Yeah.
Yeah.
So
redo that.
that's
think-
one thing I was gonna talk to you about. We just went to a training, and if you appoint them at the time that there's a challenge, it becomes problematic because the other side doesn't have a chance to weigh in on who you appointed.
It has been a
There-
while.
Once you have somebody with an issue, people learn about it before they get appointed, and
should, for the purpose of the ordinance, should that be further identified, maybe even as a definition?
Well, that definition will be, is already defined in the city ordinance.
Okay, we just need,
part of city code that we need to just, we already have it on appeal authority in a different section of code. We just need to.
could you further clarify that, appeal through the appeal authority as provided by city
Oh,
code?
and link the ordinance? Yeah, we could do
Yeah,
that.
reference the
Re-
ordinance.
Reference the ordinance.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah, that could be just a recommendation.
Then you're not just making something up as you go.
Yeah, and what I wanted to do was reference the city process that's already here. And
I like that.
and I like the idea of just let's add that ordinance number in
Okay.
there.
Perfect. Yeah, that defines it. And then the other question I had was on page 5, about the middle of the page on addressing.
Okay.
It talks about a separate address shall be established, internal, shall have the same address with the addition of letter B, a detached shall have the letter C added, but then we say ADUs shall use a PO box for mail service delivery. And let me just add some color to that. 30 years ago, if you lived in Morgan, you had to have a PO box over at the post office to have mail delivery. It wasn't delivered to your PO box at your home. So a PO box for the most part in Morgan means a PO box at the post office. That seems to be in conflict. Here's a street address and a PO box.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. So the address is for emergency services and, deliveries or something like that, and giving somebody a location. Essentially, you would just add a B or a C
Okay.
on the house number, on the curb. The reason for the PO box is because the post office told the city, Teresa, as part of our due diligence, that they would not deliver to additional PO boxes or other things. And we didn't want a renter to be getting their mail to be going to the main home.
Oh, so you're separating the renter's mail by the use of a PO box.
Yeah,
I got you. Okay,
Which makes sense.
It does.
yeah, I hear you.
Because if all of a sudden it's not used as a secondary unit anymore, and
Yeah, good point.
convert it.
Yeah,
Then you've got two addresses. at the
hey,
same
good answer.
And it would be kind of confusing sometimes to the letter carrier, I would think, too. you know.
So well,
So we'll just have to tell emergency services what it means when they
Yeah.
see a B and a C. And that did run through the county as well.
if a letter came to, a street address, parentheses B or street address, parentheses C, they would just send it back, I guess, if there was no PO box listed on it. If the street address was given as the delivery address, that piece of mail would just be sent back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was no PO box. That is the only way that will allow delivery services with the PO box on an ADU.
The only
Okay.
thing that becomes problematic is Amazon and other deliveries. So I lived in a place where we only had a PO box, and even though we had a street address, it was not recognized as a shipping
Delivery.
address. And so we couldn't get online deliveries, even though it wasn't the postal service. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
I guess
It-
they could
it-
just
it
make an
wouldn't-
agreement with the owner.
They'd have to use their address. Like I had to have stuff shipped to the Merc or somewhere in town and go pick it up. Serious, like,
Yeah.
cause they run through the database and say that's not a valid shipping address.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
And they don't, does
Just something for them
Amazon
to-
ship to PO boxes?
no.
Amazon doesn't ship to PO boxes?
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
That's actually the reason that most of them have it shipped to the home and that it's homeowner occupied. So the homeowner knows
That it's, yep,
you got a tenant back. If you get an Amazon package,
they'll drop it at the front door.
we used to get Amazon packages for one of our, I guess you call them homesteaders.
Mm.
Somebody that stayed at our house, in the basement for a while.
And just so they're, just so they're aware of that.
Yeah.
If you separate that, so.
But you're okay with requiring the PO box?
Yeah,
for mail?
that makes sense. I hear what you're saying. Yep, good.
And there's, Mayor, in response to Dave's question regarding the appeal authority, there's a whole section, 1010 is all just outlines the state law and appeal authority, so.
So the
It's-
reference is a much more efficient way of
Right.
going to that rather
that would
than
be good. We can add-
republishing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that way, if we make any changes to the appeal authority ordinance,
it's
then,
automatic.
yeah,
It's automatic
we,
with this.
we don't need to do it in duplicate locations.
So are you saying we should have somebody named as our appeal authority?
Yeah, I think that's Ty's argument is have it now, even though it nothing happens.
So I think if we go back, way back, that we'll see that by resolution, I think, or ordinance, we named a couple, 2 to 3, but those need to be updated, like you're saying, Ty. So that,
How do you, what's the best way to select a person as appeal authority?
a lot of times it's the attorney from another jurisdiction.
Okay.
That can sit, like, for example, Clint Drake from Bountiful used to sit on ours and we used to sit on his.
Oh, okay.
All the time, or the League of Cities and Towns, Meg
Yeah.
has acted as one. Craig Call has acted. So there are some that have know quite a bit about it. Paul Nelson from Salt Lake is really good as well.
Okay.
So we just select somebody from the land use group and see if we can.
Somebody that can be objective and knowledgeable. So that's the thing is like, if
Yeah.
it's like, well, yeah, you picked your guy, of course, you're not gonna listen to my,
Right, wouldn't have a
Bill,
conflict
mhm.
because of being local or whatever.
so. Now that Gary's not Layton City, maybe, no, I'm just kidding,
Well,
more of a conflict, but.
yeah, it's actually,
But,
and
maybe,
I couldn't do it because. you
maybe
know, I'm
Steve Garst,
part of the process of getting them to that point.
Right.
but Steve Garside now, yeah,
Yeah, Steve,
because
could.
he's not ours. He's familiar with our
he'd be a great choice.
Yeah.
code, but.
The other nice part with that is they're professionals that know they may not be called on, where if
Yeah.
you're taking somebody just from the community and 3 years later, they haven't had an assignment, they wonder.
Yeah.
Or now that you're not Layton City, we could reciprocate.
Yes.
So we could have Clint be ours and you could be theirs.
You're gonna, oh, that would be good for them. Okay, other questions?
Only comment I have is you guys, planning commission and Jake has spent a lot of time on this. It's been a topic of discussion in many of the planning meetings, so.
Yeah.
I have a concern you might have addressed already, but the idea of building the ADU before the primary residence could become problematic unless it's a joint application at the same time. So if you're gonna link the utilities, I really think you have to have that main residence figured out and in process, right? Because so many things could change. And if you built your ADU first, because right now we don't allow you to build the barn before the house. You have to build the house and then.
Yeah, I mean, a great example would be the foundation homes, the basement homes of the past. We get the foundation poured, we put boards over the top and we live in that. Oh, I'm thinking I'm going to build it, but 20 years later, it's still a foundation with boards across the top. So I wonder if that needs to be addressed in the ordinance.
So if it's,
Well, but
I don't know, I was just asking if you addressed that when
We-
you went
we-
through planning and,
we don't,
or do you talk about it at all?
I don't recall having that conversation.
no.
At the
it-
same
I
time
think
makes
they're
sense,
not-
but one
I don't think
before
it
the other
came up.
kind of becomes a little problematic in my mind.
How's it problematic as long as the utilities, the main structure are stubbed up and you still have all the, code metering and all that?
So
Would
it's just
a-
which
would-
one you're calling which, because if
Yeah,
you're
would an-
matching, everything's based on matching the primary residence.
Oh, sure. So I guess maybe then the process would require somebody to get plans for both units and how the whole property is going to work.
Yeah.
And then they could build one or the other first.
Right.
Would that work?
That's what I'm saying, because if you build one and you're like, well, now I want to build my dream home, but I'm limited because
Don't have
the placement of or the placement of my ADU, it's an accessory dwelling unit, but it's not an accessory to anything unless you've already built the primary.
But
residence.
an accessory dwelling unit would not stand on its own by itself for 10, 20, 30 years, would it?
It could just be a small house.
And we would allow that? I mean, would that?
Unless we require the primary to be built.
Cause the setbacks are different, right?
They are.
Yeah.
So it could be that the primary is built first or both building plans are approved at the same
The
time.
I'm thinking you're gonna want that, because I could picture running out of money. Here's an accessory unit and
Or,
you got a neighborhood full of homes and your neighbor's got the garage turned into a.
Are you okay if
or in the
they-
back corner, right? Like,
Yeah,
here's my
yeah.
neighborhood and I've
Now
got a
there's a-
vacant lot with someone living in the
Yeah,
back corner.
in the
Yeah.
back.
Are
Doesn't
you okay
like
if
them.
they build the accessory first, as long as they have the building plan for the primary structure also approved?
I think that's where one of the big reason you'd run into trouble is I got it built. I don't have the money. Interest rates went up, finances dried up. I don't have the money to do the main one. And 10 years later, it still hasn't come together
I'd rather see the main residence built first.
So if
or together.
we don't have anything that says we've got a building permit approved to force anybody to build,
Right,
so they can always withdraw, let it lapse.
yeah.
Oh, then you're starting from zero, right? If you
Or-
waited 5 years with the building permit,
And then they
are you
sell,
starting over?
yeah,
Okay.
and they sell and they want something different. I'm just saying that in the true spirit of accessory dwelling unit, that's,
Well, again, it needs
Well,
to be an
yes.
accessory. If that
That's what
primary
I'm
is never
saying.
built, it's
Yeah.
not an accessory. It now is the
I
primary.
guess in my mind,
At
that
half the,
that
scale.
definition of accessory to me almost indicates that there's a primary structure there already.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, in my mind, now it becomes an accessory to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it is.
It's certainly true for the internal. I think
So-
what you're referring to is the
Yeah,
external,
we're
right?
talking about these.
So is this something we can discuss in the main council?
Yeah,
meeting?
I'm writing language that you could just add on.
Okay.
We've got a great location. In fact, it's right here. We could add it as a G. And we could say detached ADU shall be built after the primary dwelling is built or at the same time.
Or
Or
simultaneous.
simultaneously.
That's good.
Then we'd have to add your comment too, as far as, what was it you brought up a moment ago? Your first,
I don't remember.
yeah,
We didn't have anything on.
Oh, the appeal authority? No, or the PO box?
Authority.
Adding a reference to the appeal authority is that.
That was the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, those
Have
were
that.
yes, yeah, right,
Yeah, the
right,
appeal.
yeah.
It's
Ti-
chapter
ti-
10.
Tied it into our ordinance. Just-
10.
Yeah,
10.10.
that's what it was.
Okay,
Chapter 10.
okay, chapter 10.10. Okay,
Okay, let's move on to some training.
Well, John, we've been waiting 6 months, Gary, for this training.
exciting.
Whatever you'd like to bring
So-
us.
One of the most frustrating, I think, things that I did up on the Hill was to deal with referendum issues. Because there was always a sentiment that referendums are sacred in some fashion because they deal with the electorate, the people who vote and their ability to vote. So just to give you a little history, and history's boring, right? But it's interesting that Utah was one of the first states to adopt a referendum or initiative.
Oh.
Back in 1900, all the way going that far back. The folks up on the Hill determined that we need some way for the people to be able to vote on issues. And there were a total by 1920 of about 9 states that actually adopted any kind of referendum or initiative. But I truly believe that those who originally imposed referendum and initiative, placed it in the Constitution, never anticipated that it would be used to limit somebody else in the use of their land. That's my personal belief. And I think if they thought that, they would have put a restriction on, which they immediately did. In subsequent years, they exempted zoning altogether. The
Oh,
use
wow.
of being able to restrict somebody's use of land, they exempted it entirely. You couldn't find it in the state code. The Constitution says that the people have a right to vote on issues, but only as the legislature creates the rules for voting on those issues. And the court's been kind of sensitive to that to make sure that the legislature doesn't overreach. But there was never a rule created for a long time that even addressed planning and zoning and even financial issues, taxation, that type of thing. We're not subject to that. Later on, probably in the 70s, they did invoke a provision of state law that allowed for planning and zoning to be subject to it, but limited it specifically to legislative issues like a rezone, a massive rezone of the city, or a large master plan change, or an annexation. Those are all legislative acts, but they're big and they're broad and they're things that, the whole countryside, everybody in the city of Morgan can vote on, right?
Did other
And-
states follow with similar changes in the 70s?
No, a lot of the states just remain exempting land use.
Mhm.
A lot of them do not. I don't know the numbers, but I know that many of them, land use is excluded.
Mhm.
Because you've got two conflicting constitutional rights. You got the people's right to develop their land and you got the people's right to vote on something. So should somebody with the right to vote be able to restrict this person
Yeah.
on how they use their land? And the answer until recently has been no. Okay. And then all of a sudden they invoked, the court one time told the city attorneys, and I remember it was a Supreme Court justice, he told the city attorneys, he said, if you ever bring a referendum to us, we're going to rule against you. And that was Justice Michael Wilkins, who was, that was about 15 years ago. And since that time, the court moved further and further and further that direction by restricting what you could do with land use, and to the point where in 2021, there was a legislator that actually put single lot rezones were never included in that broad category of land use legislation. they were considered to be somewhat between administrative and legislative. But they were never, they actually put it in the code in 2021. So I think that was the maximum. That was the last straw for everybody. And particularly where you've got a legislature that's more oriented now towards land use and letting people develop their land. And if people with a referendum right can do dangerous things to affordability, they can essentially legislate so that you are limited to single family lots on 20 acres. You know, they can do that type of thing. And there's a balance. And the court has often said that balance is between you, who are elected by the people to make decisions for the people, and the people themselves. The problem has been is that has shifted considerably, because the people a lot of times, and I'm not saying in every case, but in many cases now, can hire a firm out of Las Vegas to essentially hire individual college students for $1 a signature to go out and get the number of referendum signatures that you actually need. It doesn't take anything. You can do it overnight. There are limitations. I've sent out just a kind of a summary of the legislative process along with links, and I'll send that to Denise so that she can send it out to you with the links so that you can take a look at it. But the time periods in a referendum have been sacrosanct. They're as strict as we are in our land use time periods. And in fact, the courts have actually come back a little bit from where they said they were 15 years ago when they told us don't even bring one of these to us. And they've come back now. In last year, they made a determination in a Nibley case. It was a case that occurred where the city of Nibley had a referendum over what? High density housing, right? And the court, or the individuals, the sponsors of the referendum, wanted to use electronic signatures because it was during the time of the pandemic. And they claimed that the governor had opened that door by saying that many things can be done with electronic signatures because of the pandemic. The courts actually said, no way. You can't use that. We're not going to let you use that electronic signature. That was strict. That was a strict interpretation, notwithstanding what the governor had said. And so we're kind of seeing the court going backwards a little bit. And then this last year, there was a couple of legislators that put into code. It was Senate Bill 199. Senate Bill 199 says that if it's a land use, they actually divided land use from all the other uses. And they said if it is a land use provision and it has received 100% vote from the legislative body, that it is not subject to referendum, that you can't take it by referendum. So that was in this last year in Senate Bill 199. So
land use only.
Land use only. Land use only. So, and even when you do bring a land use referendum that passed, it's enrolled. It was Mike Schultz and I remember the senator. Yeah. So anyway, so things have swung the other way a little bit, but the other day we had a determination by the court. It was a result of a long battle that has gone back and forth and is not over yet. And I'm not passing judgment on the way the judge made his determination, but I'm questioning if the courts will follow that track by saying that the rights of an individual to vote on what somebody else does with his property are sacrosanct over above the rights of an individual to use their property. I don't know that the courts are going to go along with that. I think once it gets to the court, I think there's going to be a really strong question involved as to whether or not those two competing constitutional rights, should be observed.
Is this Wasatch Peaks?
This is Wasatch Peaks. Yeah. The other thing is that he found that there was, and I'd like to answer any questions you have about that case, but he found that there ought to be an injunction which prevents Wasatch Peak from not only using their past permits that were granted by the county, because the county made the assumption that until such time as the referendum is approved, if you take a look at step number let's see. Step number 9. Step number 9 actually indicates in the code that the stay that you have on a ordinance that is put into place by a legislative body like yourselves only happens after the signatures are all approved by the clerk. And in this case, the judge decided just the opposite. He decided that the stay started from the very first day that these folks filed a petition. And even though the petition was inadequate, and he ruled subsequently that it was not, and there were a lot of approvals that were given by the county on the assumption of the way that the law has been read in the past, and that is that the thing is in place until such time as the petition is rejected or is actually accepted. It's verified. And it makes sense if you think about it. Why should you stop a zone change from taking place if the signature is never if they were never valid in the first place? You're holding somebody up from using their property, in this case, an awfully long time, because the appeal went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, we don't want to do what we normally do, which is to consider this and put a stay on this. We're going to give it back to the district court. District court took it again, and they proceeded to find that the signatures were valid. But in the meantime, there were a number of approvals that have been given to the property owner.
They never did have signatures, so did they? Didn't have signatures.
Well, they made a mistake in the way that they gathered signatures was the allegation, but they now are able to go out and get signatures. That was just to approve the petition. That's it. The county didn't go any further because the county has to actually do a ballot provision, and then it has to be taken out, and they've got 45 days to gather the signatures to be able to move the thing forward. But the judge found an injunction. He found that there was irreparable harm that might occur to the 5 property owners if he didn't impose an injunction. The irreparable harm was to their constitutional right to have this put to a vote of the people.
Constitutional meaning the state of Utah.
State of Utah Constitution. Yeah. And so,
Well, what,
go ahead. Questions in the last 2 minutes, sorry.
I mean, isn't that like it's almost like a direct democracy, right? Where there's almost, you could almost cause tyranny because of the opinion of what? The majority, right? I mean,
Well, the idea
that's
the idea, is that the majority can make a decision. But the problem with referendum is the majority never makes the decision. It's always a minority. And all you got to do is go to the front door. And this happened in Layton. We had 107 acres that we had a zoning ordinance being passed in. 107 acres of property owned by the LDS Church that was planned for development. And they hired a firm to go around, and all they had to say was, don't you think we ought to vote on this? This is eating up our agricultural land. Don't you think we should vote? All we want to do is vote. Sign this, and all you got to do is vote. And then they had a firm that actually reproduced the notice that we were required to send out, because there is no restriction on giving false information at the door or giving false information that seriously looks like government information. That's the reason referendum has kind of gone bananas. And that's the reason we've fought every year as a league to try and rein it in. We've tried to allow for as much information as possible, true information to be given to people. Because once a referendum is filed and it's firmed up, the city can no longer say anything about their position. They can't spend a penny or the county can't spend a penny on essentially putting their position out there without getting the other side equal time. But the same principle does not apply to the other side, giving whatever information they want to out there without that. So we tried to limit that in years past, but nonetheless, I think there are items that the judge essentially said, well, we're almost correct. They were almost correct in the way they did it. I think the court's going to be very critical of that. I don't predict one way or another, but I can tell you this, that when it comes to land use issues, if I miss a time period for filing an appeal in a land use case, I'm done. If I miss a time for filing an item in this, I don't know why you would not be done in the same way, the referendum. But anyway,
Question in
that's
regards
I'm
to
on the
that
soapbox a little bit, but pardon?
is so they got them shut down, so who do they go after for the lost revenue? Being shut down.
So they've got. The developer has a couple of lawsuits filed against the individuals involved. I don't know how successful they're going to be. Yeah, it will be pretty tough.
So where is it right now? I mean,
Everything's frozen in time until such time as it goes to a vote of the people,
Even the ski operations?
even the ski operations,
you mean
everything,
that could be shut down until you have a general election?
all the permits. They could hold a special election as well. Or they could reverse the zoning, do a new vote. If they got 100% vote on the commission, it wouldn't be subject to referendum. That's my
A little bit
opinion.
annoys Gary that they may step next door and annex to Davis County. Does that make the problem go away?
And I'd hate to conjecture, but I don't think that makes any sense from Davis County's point of view either.
Because you're supposed to provide the services.
Yeah.
Then Davis would have to make an agreement with Morgan County for Morgan County to provide the services.
Morgan doesn't provide any services.
Oh,
They're
okay.
100% contained.
Even their own.
That's true.
sewer.
Yeah, they're
Fire,
They're their own
Well, no, they
everything.
have a
So that could
nonetheless,
happen.
All of the, whatever burdens there are, that the five individuals have, it's brought the lawsuit and the referendum. So there's some concern to something. To me, it seemed like the revenue could go to Davis County if it did, and yet we still end up with those burdens.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we live with it.
Answer is yes. Yes, it could happen.
Okay,
Yeah. So
These are,
sorry, that's just kind of preliminary
that's
training.
very
This is the
interesting.
process. And
It's very timely too, so thank you.
we'll
Yeah.
see what happens, right?
Keep it away
they
from here.
appeal the referendum? I mean, can they take it to court themselves and, I don't know.
So they've tried, but you keep drawing the same judge. And so the judge isn't going to, he let us know the other day that he's not going to change his opinion.
Just hide.
Mhm.
Judge
No,
Hyde.
So the only way that his opinion can be changed is through an appeal to the court, to the Supreme Court. And that should happen fairly quickly because of the expense involved.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
yeah.
number of jobs.
300 jobs.
If you take a look at irreparable harm,
Yeah, on hold.
that's the amount that they demonstrated the other day was not, those were actual
That's-
figures.
Significant, isn't it?
Their next step is to try to appeal it to the
The Supreme
Supreme Court.
Court, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Let's move on to the next meeting.
Another property could be evaluated.
Yeah.
Most people are like, I don't want this in my backyard and the property is gonna go down.
But in this case, it's the opposite.
So Gary, I guess my question was this. Constitution, they didn't want a direct democracy for that very reason. They didn't want
Right.
a tyranny of a majority. They wanted a representative.
They still left the
Yeah.
rules to the legislature, but or has kind of turned that on its ear, but it's moving back. I see a real move back, so
Wow. This is crazy.
it is.
Millions, tens of millions of dollars.
That's and jobs.
And yet we're leading. Heck, it sounds like in this referendum concept.
We've been fighting referendums,
Yeah.
not because it's wrong, but it says it's changed so much with
The original intent.
with electronic means now. You can tell all kinds of untruths, but if the government has to remain silent during the course of the
Yeah, I
referendum,
mean, that's
it doesn't really,
hardly, yeah, it's hardly equitable.
it's not.
Yeah.
It was, and you've got usually just a very small group of people you know, very small group of people that are, you rarely have the whole city
Yeah,
in an uproar or something. It's usually 5 people.
yeah, here we go.
Yeah, right. That's the problem. And those 5 people can hire a firm to go out and do what an entire city would do. That is to get.
Then why do we have, why do
You have a representative. Exactly. Yeah.
if that's the ultimate, decision maker,
So we try.
authority.
We try every year to pare that back, Dave. And the last couple of years, we've managed to say, okay, you can't just go to one big group of people, you have to divide the city up. You have to get 75% of them, 75% of
I
them.
remember you talking about that. With developers at the helm of the legislature, wouldn't you pick up more traction?
That's actually what they did last year. I could not believe they got a law that says that if you get 100% of you that vote in favor of it, you can. That is big.
Gotcha.
That's actually the way to get around this, but
Yeah.
whether or not they have the political
Right.
desire to do that after a judge has made a decision. So,
Probably small.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, stay tuned.
Wondered why that.
Okay.
They can still do the taxes on all the permits up until the state.
Yeah.
That should be known. From what you said, she shouldn't be able to do anything.
So interestingly enough, is that Judge Hyde says no. Because it's from the day that they filed.
Yeah.
But the courts, not the courts, but even just a review of the law says that it's, that it was in place until such
Before
time
the
as,
state. So
yeah.
anything before that is still.
right,
doable.
yeah.
And that's what-
But that's
what
what's,
Janelle's saying, but
that's what's
she
going up.
just likes
That's
that-
exactly the issue that's going to do. Exactly it. That was, so either the county's gonna get right.
I'm okay.
We'd like to welcome everybody to our Morgan City Council meeting, December 12th, 2023. We've had a work meeting already and discussed a few things. And so we'll now begin our general meeting. I've asked, can't remember the order. I believe Jeffrey, I asked you if you'd give the pledge.
Yeah.
And Jeff, if you would give us a prayer.
Everybody, please rise and repeat the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, so we gather here this evening as a city council. We ask thy blessing on us as we discuss the things of the city that benefits everyone in the community, and that we'll be mindful of our concerns of the items we talk about were, I asked thy blessing on the first responders and those serving in the military and stuff, and asked thy blessing on all those folks. And say these things in the name of the Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Okay, council members, have you had a chance to look over the agenda? If so, if there's no discussion, I'd take a motion.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we approve of tonight's agenda.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion from Tony, a second from Jeffrey. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous, Denise. If we go into item 2, consent agenda. The work meeting on November 14th, the council meeting on November 14th. Our special council meeting on December 5th, and our warrants from 11/9/23 to 12/8/23. Does anybody have any discussion on them?
Couple of corrections, Mayor. The minutes of Morgan City Council meeting on November 14th, page 1. The meeting was called to order by Mayor Steve Gale. We'll have that read. The meeting was called to order by Pro Tem Mayor Extraordinaire Tony London.
Right.
And then the other change was on page 7 of the draft, just towards the bottom. Under amendment to Title 10, Chapter 10.22. Council Alexander mentioned the item was at Jake's request, put the word request in there, and reference was made to the Planning Commission.
Did you get that changed, Denise? Okay,
Yeah. That's all I had. Thank you.
thanks, Dave. Is that all the discussion? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the city council work meeting minutes of November 14th, 2023, the city council meeting minutes of November 14th, same year. City council special meeting minutes of December 5th, 2023, and the warrants from 11/9 to through 12/8 of 23.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Dave, a second from Tony. All in favor?
Aye.
I believe that's unanimous, Denise. Okay, item 3, which is a rare occasion, but we have somebody here for a citizen comment. So if you'd mind coming to our little podium and push the green button, so the green button's on, and state your name.
Perfect. Ed Schultz, 4175 North Morgan Valley Drive, and parts west of there with Wasatch Peaks Ranch. So I'm here tonight to talk about some changes in the community. We have been a member of this community for almost 5 years now, and there was a recent ruling that was transitioning a temporary restraining order due to some litigation, now transitioning into a preliminary injunction. And I wanted to share some information about the impacts, because while this is very impactful to us as a company and us as members of the community, it is also very impactful to you all as members of the community. We have over 190 employees, 40 of which are Morgan residents. We have now 140 approvals from Morgan County and also the state and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that have been put into question. But really, the impact now extends to all members and all citizens of the county, all taxpayers within the county, and the school kids in the county. Last year, our residents on the 50 home sites that we platted and created in 2022 resulted in tax payments to Morgan County that totaled $2.2 million. And while this is a Morgan City discussion, those Morgan County taxes that were paid by our members and ourselves also fund the school district, which many of the city's residents and the school kids attend to those schools. You know, the percentage is around 70% that goes to the school district. And now fast forward to 2023, we have platted another 55 home sites. This now stands in question of where those taxes go. Those 50 home sites based on assessed values in 2022 for the original 50 could have created up to another $4.5 million of taxes for the county and the school district. That's all been put into question now. We are working to understand those implications, but I wanted all of you to understand that these impacts now extend community-wide. Again, the citizens, everyone who's a taxpayer, and the school children here. Additionally, those impacts extend beyond this valley. We have over 300 contract employees, subcontractors working for us and working for our contractors up there. Of those employees, those have all of their work has been shut down except protective maintenance. We are still trying to calculate the impact dollar wise and the impact to the people. Those employees that cannot be redeployed are going to have a very difficult Christmas. And, you know, those employees are based in Morgan County, Weber County, Davis County, Summit County, Salt Lake County. We know guys that come up from Tooele. And parts even further south. So, you know, what we're doing is really trying to raise awareness right now. I've brought a dozen impact letters that were shared in the court hearing, just as an example to talk about, just to illustrate, the impact to some of these companies. And these are companies that are large and small: Hunt Electric, small Integrity Golf, Langen Engineering, Magleby Construction, Whitaker Construction, a number of people who have illustrated the impacts to them and their people. And just recently, we're starting to hear of almost tertiary impacts. There's a small company here in town run by Tyson Priest. He's been our mechanic on all of our Can-Ams for the last 4 years. He has built his business to include more than 14 Can-Am Rangers that he leases up on the property. Well, he's already had 2 of those returned, and those aren't to us; those are to contractors and consultants. But he's questioning what happens to the rest of those. So those secondary, direct impacts, secondary impacts, tertiary impacts are gonna really extend through the community. And we believe in constitutional rights. We believe in all citizens' constitutional rights, our constitutional rights, your constitutional rights, and the constitutional rights of the individuals. But there has to be a responsibility exercised with those rights. And I'm not a constitutionalist or an attorney. That's something for the legal minds to expand on. But I just wanted to raise awareness of the impacts to your friends, your neighbors, your fellow citizens, and your children and grandchildren. So I'd like to make these letters available if you'd like to read them. They are impactful. I've read every one of them. I've talked. I know these people, and it's going to be a difficult Christmas for a lot of people. So thank you for your time and for your service here.
Thank you, Ed. And you can leave or you can stay, but we appreciate your comments and your concern to come up in front of us. So thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Okay, we'll move on to item 4, a verbal presentation to one of my good friends. So Kyler, if you'd like to come forward.
Picture time. I said picture time.
Get me out of the way.
Get out of this.
You know what is bad about this? Is when a guy's scouts are not great. Kyler, is receiving his cross connection control program in Utah. It certifies that Kyler's has through training and examination qualified for the cross connection control program, as cross connection control program administrator. Appreciate your efforts. I've watched you, on the ball. You're diligent, and we just really appreciate you here at the city. To help with some of the best drinking water in the whole state. We really appreciate that. With that, I'd like to present this to you. Let's go. Do you have any words you want to say?
No, I just appreciate you. I never thought I'd be able to work for water in the city, but it's been fun to learn about it and without being to do it.
You've done well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, smile. And I know your dad too well. I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to stick around.
Speech.
He has a lot to say.
And Kyler, you're also welcome. We don't need to bore you. Thanks for coming, Carrie.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That's a fine boy right there. We'd now like to move into item 5, the active agenda, and A is a review of the action. An ordinance enacting Title 10, Chapter 10, .16, Section 10.16.180, accessory dwelling units of the Morgan City Code, Ordinance 2316. And as Tony's faithful in always, for those who are watching, it's been under much discussion.
A lot of discussion. Planning Commission spent a great deal of time on it.
So with that, Jake, we'll have you kind of initiate a couple of things.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and try the screen share now, Denise. Okay. I have everything pulled up, so I'm ready to go. I'll provide a little bit of background for any future public that is watching the video or watching online. An ADU or accessory dwelling unit is a second residential unit that is part of the living on the property. It can be in the form of an internal ADU where it's within the building footprint. And that could include a garage being remodeled as an ADU. And then an attached ADU would be adding on to a home and becoming an accessory dwelling unit. And then a detached would be building a second structure separate from the main residential and becoming part of that residential living. And it's accessory, meaning it's secondary as part of the residential living. So it's always kind of in second place, so to speak, that it's attached to the primary residential dwelling. More than a year ago, we had a joint session with the Planning Commission and the City Council. We asked for direction on a number of items, including accessory dwelling units, and the City Council said, go for it. And also some other items that we've been doing, like the mixed residential overlay that was recently approved. So at the Planning Commission level, we took a number of months, approximately 6 to 7 months on and off in terms of working on this ordinance. In preparing this ordinance, I looked at ADU ordinances throughout the state. We combined what we thought were all the best ideas, eliminated some of the things that were unnecessary, and developed a draft. And then it took about 3 or 4 months. And with the planning commission, we monthly went through the draft ordinance in preparing this. And last month in November, the planning commission recommended this ordinance to you. This will live in Title 10, Chapter 10.16. And then so it'll be Section 10.16.180. And this will be a new ordinance for Morgan City. And it's something that we have had some residents come and ask us about. We've had requests for it, not a lot, but quite a bit. And you probably heard some of it at council. And so if passed, then this ordinance will provide further options for housing. And something to think about, it does assist with housing affordability. Let's just say, take a family that wants to, or an individual that wants to buy a home. They can afford to get in the home, but it still is tough. If they can remodel it or it comes as is and have an internal ADU, then they can have a source of income there. And I am hearing that ADUs are renting at anywhere from 1,000 to 12 or 1,400. So and typically ADUs do rent cheaper than apartments, particularly apartments with amenities, which we don't have in Morgan City. But an ADU probably would rent cheaper than a townhome or an entire home, of course. So it does help with affordability on renting. It also helps with affordability on those who need it to get into a home and get going with having their own home. How much of the ordinance do you want me to go through? We don't need to go through things that we did in the work session, do we?
I don't think so.
Okay. So this ordinance allows for Morgan City residents who own homes to apply for an internal ADU, or they can add on to have an attached ADU. And that would only be one ADU. You, of course, could not have two within the primary structure. And then also they could do a detached ADU. And following this, staff would need to prepare an application and we'll need to set fees. And then people would be able to do that. And of course, if it's construction involved, there would be a building permit.
So one of the points I'd like to bring up is that if it's detached or if it's adding on to the dwelling, that it's on a foundation. So it's not wheels, it's not a trailer kind of thing. And then the other thing is we, if I'm understanding it right, we have one service into it with power, water, and sewer.
Correct. There would not be allowed additional metering. So whoever is the homeowner and pays the utilities will just have to make out some kind of arrangement with the residents in the ADUs. And that's typical.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
Just wondering about our action tonight. We had talked about 2 items that would be of a change to the ordinance as it is. Would that be added in tonight or would we wait till the next meeting?
You can add it in. I could give you language. I mean, that's up to the council. We could add it back into the draft and you could see it next month. Or I have written down some language here that I could give you that you could just amend it tonight through a vote.
I think it's probably easy enough to just add it in tonight if you wouldn't mind stating what that is.
Okay. So in the section, will you remind me where it talks about the appeal authority?
Page 3,
Okay, page 3.
A and D about 3/4 the way down, 2/3 the way down. In number 1D.
Okay, under D right here. If city staff determines an accessory dwelling unit complies, no, is that?
No, it's one D, D1D.
Oh, okay. Okay, right here. A denied approval application may be appealed through the through the appeal authority. And the recommendation is that we add the city code 10.10.10 as a reference. So that whoever has a question, what does appeal authority mean?
Okay.
Then they would be referenced
Right.
to the city ordinance on appeal authority. The second item is under standards for detached accessory dwelling units, we would add detached ADUs shall be built after the primary dwelling is built or simultaneously.
That would be G, item G.
Yes.
Can you repeat that? I'm
Yes.
slow writing.
Yeah, detached ADUs shall be built
Okay.
after the primary dwelling is built or simultaneously. And that is so someone doesn't come in and build their detached ADU and then much later or never gets around to building the primary dwelling unit. And by definition, it's an accessory or secondary dwelling unit. It's supportive of the primary.
Thank you.
One thing I did want to mention, Denise, text, Teresa, and just to confirm, the city does not actually have a maximum building height for residential dwelling units. And I don't bring that up as an alarm to that. If the city does want to talk about that later on, you can. The maximum building height for accessory buildings is 25. So if you're going to build a barn or something like that, that's 25. That is where we came up with the building height number here of 25. I think it's good to keep it the same for consistency. However, if someone was going to have a garage and then a unit on top of it, they may just need that extra 2 or 3 feet for the peak and the roof. So I also wouldn't object to if you want to change the building height to 27 or 28. It's not going to get you, it's not going to get you a third level or anything like that. It just gives you a little bit more wiggle room with the roof design over that. So I just say both are probably okay and appropriate solutions, but I wanted to give you that point of reference where we came up with the 25-foot building height.
So to be consistent then, or with the other part, would that be discussion for a future date?
We could pass it as is, and then if someone felt they really needed that extra height, they could come in and request an ordinance exchange, an ordinance change, or they could. Does the city allow variances on setbacks or heights?
They could.
Oh, so they could request a variance.
Okay, that might be the way to go. Yep, keep it consistent tonight.
Wanted a 27 or 28.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's gonna be other changes to this down the road.
I didn't realize that either, but
That works.
Everybody good with that? Great. Is there any more discussion?
I got some notes here. I'll
We did.
take a
Amen.
stab at a
Go.
proposal. Yeah, Move to adopt ordinance 23-16, an ordinance enacting Title 10, Chapter 10.16, Section 10.16.180, entitled Accessory Dwelling Units of the Morgan City Code, providing for repealer, providing for severability, and providing for an immediate effective date, with the change in addition to the draft has been presented of in section 10.16.180.07, Part A or Part D, 1, small cap D. The statement to read, a denied approval application may be appealed through the appeal authority as referenced by City Code Title 10, Chapter 10.10. And second change would be, and I don't have the, where's the reference to that? What?
That is in
Page 4.
10.16.180.10.
Okay, and number G, is that right? Okay, so we would add to section 10.16.180.10, the letter statement G or letter G, that a detached ADU shall be built after or simultaneous to the primary structure. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. Period.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Dave and a second by Tony. Is this a roll call? Jeffrey?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Hey, Denise, that's unanimous.
ADUs really do allow for organic growth. It's a very family centered housing. Typically ADUs are rented to family members and acquaintances. That's the highest percentage of who rents them. And then a smaller percentage is to strangers. And then, of course, it allows for neighborhoods to grow organically and just, to me, it's a very good way for Morgan City to allow for growth and yet not make dramatic changes.
I appreciate all the work that you've done, Jake. I appreciate all that the planning commission's done. It's been discussed for a long
Yes, it
time.
has. Thank you for your support. I'm gonna convey all this to the planning commission.
Please do.
So
And
it's nice when they spend all this time and then they come to you and you reason and support them and the process.
I think we recognize Jake's patience also.
In training us, yeah.
Being the planning commission and taking recommendations back and making changes, as well as keeping everyone on track. So thank you.
Oh, you're
Jake.
welcome. I love it. It's fun.
Yeah, it is an effort, but well done.
yes, very much. We appreciate it. You've done a great job. Okay. I can find my item B, review action, bid award, State Street Waterline 2023 project, resolution 23-34. So Ty, we'll turn this one over to you.
Okay, so this is a water line project. We had a leak that showed up at the end of, well, in the fall at some point, and discovered the line was pretty bad shape. There's not a line there, but it's a lateral service that goes to the far property, and this is just put a main line in that could allow for future connections if anybody ever annexed or extended services beyond the certain property. So it's a main line project. We received competitive bids. We were pretty happy with the number of bids and how close they were. And so it'll be a spring project.
It's just a worn out line. Is that our problem?
Well, so right now it's just a lateral that doesn't follow the road, but where the leak was is terrible. So this replaces part of, goes back to the manhole, replaces the main line that's bad and extends the main line to the end where the last service is. So the last service will be an actual lateral instead of a lateral through several properties.
Cleans it up.
Cleans it up. Yeah, prepares for future services. Puts it in the right place. Along State Street. It's kind of work that we'd have to end up doing anyway, if somebody annexed or whatnot, so.
I think the engineer referenced the contractor and felt that he could complete the project. Do we feel the same?
Yeah, so they've worked with that company before. We've never had them do a project for us that we're aware of. But
The engineer has.
the engineer has, yeah, on other projects in a different city, so.
Okay.
So the bid came in right around 225,000. I always round because I flip numbers, so.
I always ask this, Gary, in this motion, do we state the bid amount?
No, so
Been doing it a little different lately.
yeah, we've always just authorized me to do change orders if change orders come up, but we have the pricing. So they have all the line item pricing in the bid document. So if they run into something, in the past, we've just allowed me to make change orders, but we don't vary from the prices that we've been given without coming back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't,
We have mentioned it before, but we haven't done it as a not to exceed amount. We've just said we're awarding the bid at this amount and
Is that too restrictive?
it can be done either way. It just means that we bring it back to council for every change order. Which just,
yeah, I think we wanted to stay away from that.
yeah, it could just slow up the project, that's all.
Ready for a motion, Mayor?
Ready.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve of resolution 23-34. A resolution authorizing an agreement with Allied Underground Technology for the State Street Waterline 2023 project. Authorizing further negotiations and change orders necessary for the completion of the State Street Waterline 2023 project.
Second.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion from Tony, a second from Jeffrey. Dave,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
Jeff, Jeffrey.
Aye.
Hey, Denise, that was unanimous. Okay, is there any reports or business that the council would like to bring to attention?
Christmas tree on the flagpole looks outstanding. That looks cool.
Cindy approved.
My wife thinks she looked that. She thinks it looks pretty cool. So anyway,
So did my wife.
So then it's good.
yeah.
So
It's okay.
appreciate that. We are looking for a 40-foot one because the flagpole's 40 feet. So you know how it only goes up
Yeah.
part of the way. That's all we could get at the time. But if we have an opportunity to do the full pole, that'll look even better, but appreciate that. I wish, we were sweating because we were about to string our own lights just up and down, down the pole, because it was,
Looked better than I was anticipating.
we got it 2 days before the Christmas event. And when we first got the pole, it wasn't even an option. They didn't sell them, and then they got some in stock, and
Well, the
So,
base looks
appreciate-
really nice too.
oh yeah, the base looks good, huh?
Yeah.
And the lighting, so appreciate that. Thanks, Jeffrey.
And the hometown Christmas went off without a hitch, I think, right?
Yeah, that's,
Stage was wonderful.
The stage was great.
yep, the only challenge we have is the outlets need all redone. So we have some power outlets along the fence for vendors and food trucks, and we had to go find a generator to get a couple of them just to get lights too. It's they're just in terrible shape, so we'll make that a project too to
The stage brand new.
no, along the fence, so the stage doesn't come with its own power, so you have to run power up to the fence for all the vendors and the stage. The flagpole has power to where the lights are, you know how it shines up on the flag, but the rest of the power outlets they've had it. And we pulled one of them out of the snow to even try and plug it in, so I let the power guys handle that. They're not scared of low voltage, so, or relatively low. Compared-
transmission.
Compared to what they work on, so.
If you had a suggestion, I mean, a constructive suggestion, who would you make it to? The chamber?
Yeah, like a thank you or a suggestion.
No, well, I had a couple of people just mention to me, they said with the food trucks,
Uh-huh.
they said it would have been nice to have had tables set up or something where they could have actually sat down and ate. So I just,
Some kids to eat.
Like an area, yeah. I can take that feedback. I'm on the chamber board, so.
yeah, and that's all. I mean, I just heard a couple of people mention that, so I thought, well, that makes sense too, so.
Yeah, and we haven't really, we did one time when it was on the corner. On that vacant corner where the tree
Mhm.
lot is, there was one time when, one of them put out tables and chairs of their own. And then one year we did have one of the businesses make a little patio area, and they did s'mores out in the street.
Yeah.
And that was nice, just, I don't know if it was weather or just personal preference that they didn't do it this time.
Yeah,
but,
just a couple of comments I had that
be
the
nice
food
to
trucks
make a
were
little
great,
area.
but there was nowhere for them to
Appreciate the feedback.
sit down and eat, so.
Okay. Council, thanks for the comments, and Ty will go to our city manager updates.
I'll just start with, we have this last storm, we've had a handful of complaints about our efforts to plow the snow, and just to update to council, our brand new snow plow broke. And it went back in the shop on Monday, but 10 minutes into using our old one, it also broke, blew a hydraulic line. And so we got way behind on that storm compared to normal. So not to make excuses, but typically depending on the storm, if we get out and plow before a lot of people have a chance to clear their driveway, then a lot of the snow doesn't get pushed back into their driveway. But when they clear their driveways before we get to it, and we haven't made a first pass, then it's more snow that gets put back. And the more snow we have, the further it also gets on sidewalks. But with the equipment that we had available and the fact that it kept snowing, we really didn't have a chance to do as good a job as we would have expected of ourselves. And so if you get those complaints, pass them on, but that's kind of the backstory of what happened during that storm.
The repairs been made.
Repairs are in the work, so we're glad that we have no
That's
storms
great.
this week.
Yeah.
But the company was really good. They're just like, yeah, bring it right back. And they got it right into the shop same day on Monday. So they don't know, they've never seen something like that happen. And, we talked about a piece of asphalt that, it snagged on, and it took a chunk out of the asphalt, but that normally happens with plows. It shouldn't. Yeah, we couldn't find, like, at first he's like, maybe I hit a manhole or something, or, but really went back and looked, and it was just something with the blade on the plow that was faulty, so.
Yeah, it pretty much came off the frame.
Yeah, I told him maybe they put, I told them that shear pins are for snow blowers, not snow plows. So yeah, the whole thing came off, but anyway, I'll just start with that. Then we have the UAMPS annual meeting tomorrow. I mentioned this last time, but Clark's getting his award, so we'll, at a future meeting, probably want to do, the mayor will probably do similar to what we just did for Kyler. And then that technical service agreement is just an agreement I signed. It's just a price list. It's to look at the commercial street. So right as you come off State Street and go up Commercial Street, we're looking at making that really rough road into a spring, part of our spring project. It's one of the concerns the mayor first brought to us when you started. I think it's been that long.
That and the gutter up there.
The gutter, but we don't know what's underneath it. So we're not exactly sure what approach we take before we, do a rip out and replace. We're just paying a company to help us assess what we're trying to build on top of, or how much to remove and that sort of thing. So that's what this contract helps us with.
I know there's concrete up there on the old commercial portion, but I don't know if it goes clear down off that hill or not.
Yeah, the hill portion is just what we don't know. It's been built up for so many years too, and it,
But I do
like the mayor
remember
said, the waterways,
laying the top of the concrete up on Commercial Street.
there's concrete up there. Okay,
This is just as you exit the freeway,
yeah, so,
on the hills.
In the hole.
yeah, right off of State Street as you get onto Commercial Street.
Go under the tracks and turn left to go up Commercial Street, or
Okay,
The hole.
okay.
Or on the way down, you turn right before you get to the train tracks.
The hole.
Then the pre-annexation that we, dealt with as a council, got reviewed by Lieutenant Governor's office and has been approved. I don't know if any other comments beyond that, just it's approved, and so we'll start working with them. Okay. Train depot project's going well. So probably by the first of the year, the Historic Society will be in there. It's really taking shape, looks really good. We got a new sign for it that goes out front. And where that power pole is gonna go away when they redo the electrical and we get the fiber off of that pole. So there won't be a pole out in front of it. So we're just gonna put the sign out in front of it and have some light shine up on it, but it's a metal sign that looks really nice. I did get a response from Union Pacific, so I reached out to them in October, and that train park, we were like, well, if we don't get some movement on an easement, then we probably won't be able to include it. And just this week, actually just today even, I heard back that it shouldn't be a big deal to adjust our easement going east so that we can. So I told them we'll readdress that and look at that train viewing park on that grant. Well, we have that grant. Just kind of an off and on thing, but the guy I'm speaking to is really responsive. We've emailed back and forth 3 times in the last 2 days. So that's way responsive for
it's unheard of.
not hearing from them for a while. And so
Is that a surprise that they would be willing to?
it's not a surprise. It's just difficult sometimes with Union Pacific to make sure you got a hold of the right person that knows, that's helping you out. He looked up our agreement. But because our agreement is so old, to adjust the boundaries doesn't really impact them a whole lot. So I'm pretty hopeful. It didn't seem like there'd be a problem. We already talked about hometown Christmas. Oh, the historic district has finished plaques. So they've made plaques that will go on the front of the buildings along Commercial Street. They're pretty good looking plaques, and the mayor's gonna take those around and ask if they'd be willing to put it on their building, and just working through specifically how you attach it without, hurting the brickwork or whatnot.
Brick, yeah.
Yeah. So just fun working with the historic. This historic district is a third-party nonprofit. It's not the county historic society. So it's a group of people on Commercial Street, a couple of business owners, and Cheryl Gross, and a couple that have formed a 501c something, probably C3. Yeah. And just in an effort to help out the downtown historic district. And so they've been really good to work with. The mayor and I attend their meetings once a month. So I shouldn't say the mayor and I, it's the mayor and or I. We tag team it.
Once in a while you cover and I don't.
Yeah, and sometimes you're there and I'm not, so. Then just a reminder.
When you're there because you have all the answers. The mayor doesn't, so it's good you're there.
I like it when you're there because you got volunteered to take around the plaques and put them up on the building, so. It
It'll be
worked.
fun to get to know them.
Yeah.
Better.
Then just a reminder, Christmas parties Thursday, 2 to 4. So even if you just stop by and say hi and see the staff, if you want to stay, we'll have pizza and bowling, so. It's kind of a fun time. Then we are making progress on the downtown area plan. So if you remember, we did a grant. And this is combined effort with our master trails and park plan. And city design is the lead. That's Jake's company, and we've had a couple of really good meetings and formed a committee. I think the notices have gone out, but we meet once a week.
Yes. Yeah, so we meet once a week on Wednesdays at 2:00 if you ever want to join us. And currently we're doing the background research, economic. We have a survey for business owners, managers, employees for businesses in the downtown area, which is Commercial Street and State Street. That survey has gone out to get preliminary input from businesses. Then we also have a stakeholder committee, and letters from the mayor have gone out, invitation for that. Correct? Okay. And then currently we're just doing a little background research on land uses and zoning. John Jansen on my team, you guys may know him. He's the guy with the beard that speaks at every Utah League and APA conference. Been around longer than the dirt and trees and mountains. And he's a great resource. Gary knows him well. He's doing a review of our land uses. And then Wasatch Front Regional Council is doing the lead part on parks and trails, and they're doing research on trails and parks. So be thinking of anywhere in the city that we need trails, trailheads. This is a long-term vision. The state is going gangbusters on trail grants. I have information I'll be sending to you, Ty, which you may already have. But in this year alone, the state has given away more than $6 million on trails and outdoor recreation related. And there's other things you can do, fishing ponds, trailheads, some parks as part of that. But the majority of that money is trails. A community in Cache Valley that I work with, last year, they've received $500,000 for trails last 2 years and built a lot of it too. So certainly there's a lot of money to be had with that. You will need to match money though for trails. So
We have one of the trail grants, and we're applying in the spring for
good.
our next one. So
good.
along the bridge, that's that connector.
Oh, that'll be really good. And this plan will help us.
Yep.
You have to have a plan in place, and you have to have land in place. And it doesn't necessarily need to be land that the city owns. It could be private property that wants to work with the city, or it could be city or public property. But there is a lot of money out on trails, and Morgan is surprisingly, when I started working with you a couple years ago, I thought you would have had more trails than you do. And so I think a lot of people want to see more trails up here.
Is there,
We'll go ahead.
Ty, has there been any more noise about, I mean, a few years ago, when Geneva bought that property over there, you know, there was some discussion about a swap with, they wanted to access some of that DWR property, and in exchange for that, they would provide a parking lot or a trailhead onto that DWR property. Has there been any more conversation about that, or
Just that it's still in the works.
it's still on the table?
Yeah, yeah, that's just them working with the state on the,
I mean, I realize it's out
Plan
of
and
our hands,
transactions.
but,
yeah.
you know, I was just curious if there was still some progress on that.
Yeah, last I heard that it was still in process, but it just takes a long time for a land swap like that to get approved, and
Would DWR allow for trails where the primary
It's-
purpose is habitat?
it's just an access, it's just
Be
an
an access.
access to,
Well, there's,
so that they have, it would give them property that's not part of the protection area, but it would be,
Access to the protection area?
uh-huh.
Would they allow for trails in the protection area?
I think it's.
Probably-
It's got a little more restriction because it's a winter range.
winter rain,
yeah, but it would just,
it would,
January first to be open.
Oh, so you could just gate it?
yeah,
Yeah,
that, it would just
okay.
be controlled.
Okay.
it would be,
Bring it
no-
low.
it would
That's
be no
good news.
different than Hennifer Echo, would it?
Oh, yeah,
Right.
Same thing.
January 1 to.
Wouldn't be trails on it, but it would provide an access to it.
And whatever would have to just have a zero impact to the wildlife. So whatever that,
If the wildlife, if it's a winter range, then you just.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some of that in Cache Valley that I'm aware of where
yeah,
trails are open, but that's when you use it the most is in the summer, so.
Probably
That's it.
Snowshoes on, you don't use it in the winter.
yeah.
Yeah,
3,000 acres or so.
Yeah.
So, last update is just, we got, two new,
3,547
trucks, and we have two that will be, for sale, and so we'll have a surplus meeting scheduled. The two trucks that we have get cleaned up tomorrow. And, so we'll schedule a meeting to
Where do you advertise them at, Ty?
KSL. Yeah, so, if anybody's interested, we can let them know what day it'll be posted, and then they just have to go find let us know, and just a first come, first serve type thing, so. But, one of them, if you want to know, one of them's the Ram turbo diesel that Kale has been driving at the sewer or water sewer. It's gray, has black rims, and the 19. What year?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both 2019s. And the other one is Lance's truck. That's a Ram gas 6.4 dually. That Lance has been driving, so.
That's a 19 also.
Yeah, and they both ended up with 150s, F-150s, so they both downsized a little bit, but we have two other trucks on order, but no clue if or when we'll get them. So these other two came available, and we got them, so. Oh, and then we just did finish a surplus. We had a committee meeting not too long ago, and those items, everything sold on the public surplus, and we were pretty pleased with the results of we've got a person coming from Cheyenne, Wyoming to pick up a trailer, and we've got someone from Richmond, Washington to come pick up a lawnmower, so.
Even the barbecue.
I'm not sure what happened to the barbecue, but everything we posted on the public website sold. But everything we did internal, I think we got rid of some of it, but. Anyway, Unless there's any questions, I think that's my updates.
I just had one other comment from a couple of citizens. Down on the end of 100 North where we put the new sidewalk in, where it crosses 300 West, Island Road. Have we ever given thought to a crosswalk right there at the end of that sidewalk going into across Island Road? I've just had a couple of people tell me that
Yeah, we haven't.
the new sidewalk is great for the kids going, walking over. But there's quite a few of them across 300 West right there and go into those subdivisions over there
Yeah, I don't,
to the west. And I just says, I'll just bring it up. I don't know if we've
Yeah.
discussed it or,
yeah, we can look at that. That's our own road, so it's just some striping that we,
yeah, just be, yeah.
but right now, the only ones that we've done are just the ones with the, directly with the school where we man them. And I'll just find out and make sure we don't have any restrictions, but I don't think we had a real good idea of how many scatter before they get to the end of the road to warrant it.
I still don't. I've just conveyed them. what I've
No,
heard
that's
from
a good,
couple of
that's a
people.
good thought. And then we also weren't, without studying it, how much traffic goes past there, because a lot of the traffic on Island Road comes off of 200 and turns
Yeah.
down Island Road, and a lot of the other access comes off of State Street. But something we could look into for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for the feedback.
I have had in my neighborhood that vacant lot at the end of Riverside Park. You can't, you walk around, there's still that much snow and ice, to get, I don't even know how to describe where it's at, just from Delwyn Carter's. Who's supposed to push that? Who cleans the snow off of that?
Rather spot
Is it,
The vacant lot.
yeah, that vacant lot
that runs along State Street.
that runs along State Street?
It never does get pushed.
It
does
never,
Yeah,
it never does get
Yeah.
pushed, that section.
That goes down to the park? Or the?
Well, that goes
Goes along towards. the-
and then hooks you, and then you can turn and go on the walkway.
Oh,
Essentially from the bridge over to
Delwyn Carter's
Yeah.
house,
Oh,
yeah.
Crowthers.
Is that Crowther?
And the
that's
sidewalk,
typically the property owner that
yeah,
would do.
should be the property owner, but he never does.
It's,
So
I hear about that quite
Oh,
regularly
yeah.
from all my, cause we can walk the
Well, 'cause-
walkway, there's that one section that never,
Because it's vacant, most people push out in front of their own house or their own business. So that's a good point.
But it kind of does push everybody out in the road.
yeah, you've gotta go out in the road just to make that loop on the
Sure.
walkway or come off.
Oh,
the
yeah,
wa-
come around. Yeah, okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah, it's
So that
it's a
would
mess
be
tonight.
brought as a complaint. And then,
No, we can just,
Suggestion.
we'll just have code enforcement remind them. We can reach out to them and just tell them it's a safety issue.
okay,
But it is nice. You get that walkway plowed as quickly as you have been getting that walkway plowed.
A lot of people use that, holy
Because
cow.
that asphalt, it
Oh,
dries off in a hurry and keeps it pretty nice, so.
Yeah, we got a new little tractor off of a surplus that we're gonna try out that has us, we don't have the snow blower yet. But we have a little tractor with a little cab that has a PTO out the front that we could put a snow blower on that. We're excited about doing that instead of pushing snow that maybe,
Still is nice. It gets done
Yeah.
quickly, so.
yeah,
It's
But-
used all the time, but
we'll try that too and see how that works.
needs on to cross that one spot.
Thank your staff. You did
Okay.
good.
I'll thank them. They need it this week.
okay. Any more comments? All right, well, I move that we adjourn
Where's your gavel?
right here. I'll never be as good as